Alright, now I know season 31 is over and we already have new tactics and a few new changes to some nodes, but this is one war video that I just had to make because this was probably my favorite war of last season. Similar to the last war video I made for season 30 where I broke in the rank 3 Guardian, which by the way is my most successful war video, which I'm really happy with because that was probably my favorite war of all time. Even though we lost that war, I still had a lot of fun, just the experience of going through those fights was very memorable for me. So today we have another epic war, and once again it's against NewN, which is probably my favorite alliance to go to war against because I don't know what it is, but we usually either have some really closely contested and competitive wars, and or I just end up having a lot of fun with the champs I use against their defense. And today is no different, so we're gonna start on path 5, then take a power snack Doom, Footloose, Ebony more, and then in section 2 we're gonna switch to part 4, deal with an Intercept Mojo, and then in section 3 we're gonna take a Korg Miniboss and then a rank 4 Apocalypse boss. So now we are facing America Chavez with Ebb and Flow knockdown, right back at it, and Force of Will. A fight that I've done I think once before using Torch, but I've never been parried before. But I didn't think it would be that bad with Guardian, just gotta build up my charges, then knock it down before throwing the special 2. So I throw 2 special 1s because my special 2 won't have the shock debuff for extra damage. However, this still was not quite enough to end her because I had some pretty bad crit RNG on this special 2, like only the first hit crit out of 7 hits. So it wasn't quite enough to take her out, just had to carry on the fight, bait a special 2. And fortunately Guardian's heavy attack will give you an armor buff for the cost of a charge. So I can lazily block that special 2, as in not even try to parry any of the hits, and not take much damage at all. And yeah, just carry on with the fight. I was considering knocking her down again just so I can deal more damage with my basic hits, since they can do a decent amount when they do crit. And when I say Guardian crits, I just mean those passive red numbers. Like, I know he doesn't actually crit. Instead, when he would crit, he deals that damage in the form of passive shock. Because I have seen a few comments about me saying Guardian crits, so I hope that just clears some confusion. Alright, so Chavez goes down. Not the quickest fight, although if I had a little bit better crit RNG, like if I had 2 more crits on that special 2, this fight would have taken about a minute and 10 seconds. So now we're gonna move on to Jabari Panther with Ebb and Flow knockdown and heavy hitter. First Doom fight of the war, and this is one of those wars where I actually did use Doom, in more fights than Tigra even, who was my MVP for the season. And honestly, it felt good using Doom in war once again, because it had been a while, with high ground being the dominant tactic. I've been using Tigra and Sorcerer a lot more than Doom when it comes to Mystics. So this fight won't take very long since Doom is pretty good at knocking down with the chaining of the heavy. So I'm not even going to use a special 3 in this fight, just special 1 and special 2. Ideally, you want to throw the special 2 when protection is down and you have the passive fury. And yeah, not that difficult. The only thing you have to watch out for is heavy hitter, with her being able to shrug off your parry stuns. So it helps if you can re-parry, of course. And with Doom, you can just block all day, especially with the Guardian synergy, because I'm actually taking 0 damage whenever I parry. Which is quite neat, there's a certain number of champs that have high enough block prof where if you parry with Guardian synergy, you take no damage. So Jabari only got to 10 charges and entered the hunt towards the end of the fight, but at that stage all I had to do was drop another combo, throw a special 1 and then a special 2. So that wasn't bad at all, and now we're gonna move on to a fight which had a few more uncertainties. There was just this one interaction that I wasn't aware of, and that made the fight a little bit more tricky, or not really tricky, but slightly more uncomfortable towards the end. So now we are taking this rank 4 Doom with power snack and backup recovery, a fight that I've done a couple of times with Doom, although I much prefer to use Mr. Negative. It's so much faster and easier with him, but because you can only fit 3 champs in a war team, I'm using Doom in this fight, which is perfectly fine. It's just not your typical Doom fight since Doom himself is shock immune, so you can't just chain your heavy, so you do have to drop those standard full combos. And you kind of need to know how to re-parry and prevent the opponent from throwing special attacks, because the main thing you want to do is to trigger Dex before you throw your special 3, otherwise the power snack will just eat up your fury buff and you won't do that much damage. And this is generally easier to do before that first special 3, because once you have the fury buff and the aura, you have a limited amount of time to Dex and get back to 3 bars. So here I was a bit fortunate to get it done quickly, because sometimes the AI just does not cooperate. So you either just carry on the special 3 cycle without the extra Fury buff, or you throw your special 2 before the Fury expires and then just start again. So this is where I made a mistake, where I didn't even think I was making a mistake at the time, but Doom's special 3 gives him a Fury buff. However, you can only have 2 at a time. So that special 3 basically replaced the previous Fury buff, which means it got eaten up by Power Snack because I didn't dex before throwing it. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought I already have my Fury buff, so I don't have to dex anymore. But unfortunately that was not the case, so my Fury did get eaten up by Power Snack and now I'm back to 1. Which isn't terrible, but it's not really ideal for this fight. But here's where the problems really started to pick up. Like, check out this AI right here. What on earth is he doing? Spamming block and then the random heavier attack, which I couldn't punish in time because it was just so unexpected for me. So I ended up relinquishing my special 2 because I was like, yeah, that Fury is probably gonna expire with the way he's behaving. Plus he doesn't have that much health now, so maybe I just need one more cycle and then a special 2 to finish him off. But then something else unexpected happened. He decided to throw a special 1 while I was blocking, and I just carried on blocking to prevent Power Snack. Plus Doom's special 1 is just so weak, so I was never concerned about the damage it would deal. Like, that's the ultimate utility special attack, you know, it's not for big numbers. And then the last mistake I made was forgetting to dex before the special 3. That didn't really matter. I think the only difference it would have made is making the fight a few seconds faster. So that's Power Snack Doom, the longest fight of this war by far, and now in contrast we're gonna have some very quick Tigra fights. So now we're gonna move on to the best Node 25 Ebony Maw fight that I've ever had. This fight could not have gone any better, and it's largely because of the AI. Ebony Maw just played perfectly into my game plan. I was actually amazed at how cooperative he was. It's like he wanted me to win. So when somebody tells you the perfect AI doesn't exist, just show them this fight. All my parries stunned him, which is rare because most of his attacks don't make contact, it's just that first light attack. But twice in a row he started his combo with it. It might have only been 2 parries, but that just says more about how willing he was to throw that special 1. Like, I'm not even trying to bait it, you know, he's just throwing it very quickly. 25 seconds in, 60% left, throw my special 2 before my charges expire, and that does just about enough damage to wipe him out. Footloose Ebony Maw, 30-second fight, 0% health loss, absolute perfection. Now let's get on to part 4. So now we have a Dragon Man with steady build-up Unblockable and special burst lockdown. So I was a bit surprised to see him here. I just didn't think it'd be very effective because, you know, Doom just renders all these nodes useless. I have been getting a bit more conscious of war placements lately because I do a fair bit of planning for Group 3 now. So after this Dragon Man, they placed a Silver Surfer who is a high ground champ, so Doom might not be the best for him. However, he can still work for it because he's armor break immune, so not much worrying about Unblockable. And then you just have to remove your shocks at the right time so they don't accelerate the altitude charges. However, it's not that straightforward to manage unless your Doom is unduped, because he does gain a lot of buffs. So that's why I was a bit surprised with the placement, because I probably could have taken this whole path with Doom. I'm more used to seeing a Spider Ham or Man Thing placed here, which makes more sense to me. But the thing about placements is it's never going to be like 100% optimized or foolproof for any scenario. Some nodes and defenders just aren't that great, but you still have to have 50 diversity, and even the toughest defenders on the toughest nodes can get soloed quite easily. So yeah, I mean, defense is whatever sometimes. So a pretty straightforward Doom fight, and now we're gonna move on to the Silver Surfer with steady build-up Unblockable, Crumbling Armor, and Heal Block. And I just noticed that this is a rank 4 Surfer, so he's got the fattest prestige in the game, although as a defender, he's just good Tigra food. And even though he does go Unblockable fairly early, you know, once Tigra gets going, that's not really an issue. And this fight was actually quite similar to the Ebony Maw one, where I had pretty much perfect AI cooperation. The special one is quite a fun one for Tigra because you first have to dex because Unblockable, then you can rush in and let the last part miss for the heavy punish, and then drop a juicy special 2 which does a fat chunk of damage with all those red numbers. So that one was quite similar to the Ebony Maw fight, where the AI just played very nicely into my game plan. So that's Tigra's last fight of this war, and now we have a Mojo with Ebb and Flow Intercept, Mighty Charge, and Crumbling Armor. So Doom works pretty well for this fight because he has good power control and it's quite easy to prevent triggering buffs with him. I was considering using Guardian instead because he's also pretty tanky and has a good way of delivering damage for this fight. So my basic strategy was to build up to the special 2 and intercept before I throw it so it does more damage. And of course, while you're at it, just play around these prompts, don't trigger Dex while he has the anti-life field on. Try to avoid doing the actions that cause the anti-life field if you can, and of course just don't get hit. So the one thing I didn't do very well in this fight was avoid triggering Dex when I didn't need to. It wasn't a major issue, but it was triggering his dispersion and causing me to bait more special attacks than I needed to. I only noticed this about halfway through the fight, and then I started blocking that last hit of the special 1. So before throwing my special 2, I would bait a special 1, punish and drop a combo with a backdraft intercept, and then throw the special 2 with a bit more damage behind it. No need for special 3 in this fight, although it can be used. Just gotta make sure it doesn't expire while anti-life field is active, which is something I did not even want to think about, so I just avoided using it completely. So now I just need one more intercept in special 2, which I have been quite fortunate with because he often doesn't just dash in and purify my incinerates with mighty charge. So they do a good amount of damage. It's just this last one that didn't last very long, but the fight is pretty much over. So that is section 2, and now moving on to the mini bosses, we have one more Doom fight, which is going to be a Korg on node 50, so Recovery, Safeguard, Indomitable, and Vigorous Assault. So a fairly straightforward fight for Doom, especially with the Wag's passive stun, just means he has no chance of shrugging off that parry stun. Not really necessary, but it does make things go a bit faster and smoother. And Korg doesn't regen, so the only node in this fight that matters is Safeguard, which will lower my damage to 1% of his max health, but that's only damage from hits, so I can still do a good amount with the incinerates. And once again, I'm not going to use special 3s in this fight because Safeguard and Korg is a bit sensitive to energy damage, so the special 2 incinerates still do a decent amount without the Fury buff. And this is generally how I prefer to play Doom when the fights aren't too long. I just find it a bit more fun and interactive when you don't have to use a special 3. However, I did mess up my timing for the first special 2. The last 3 hits came just after his rock shield was reformed, so all those incinerates got eaten up, and this is just not a good representation of meaningful damage. But I believe that was the only error I made in this fight. The rest of it went pretty much according to plan. It had been a while since I last fought Korg in war, but he is a champ that I've fought hundreds of times, so I didn't really think much about this one. Just thought I'd go in with Doom and do the usual thing. Not the flashiest or, fanciest fight, but pretty safe, pretty straightforward. Just drop your basic combos, no need for the heavy attack, no need for special 3. Push him to 3 bars and then steal it with the special 1, throw special 2s ideally when his rock shield is down. And yeah, basically repeat that process. Also hold block if you want to prevent him from throwing the special 1. You can also just block the special 1 if it's not unblockable, which it shouldn't be if you play it right. And this fight is not too specific, especially if you have the Wags pre-fight. You can use pretty much any good champ with solid damage over time. I don't really have much to say about it, so now we're gonna move on to the final fight, which is the Apocalypse boss. And funny story about this fight is I took it about 24 minutes before the war ended. I wanted to take it a bit sooner, but I was at the gym at the time and then they told me that he's open and I was in the middle of a deadlift and I was like, okay, let me just finish this set and then I'll go outside and just, get this fight done. So I go to the car, whip out the iPad and I start practicing against my own rank 3 Apocalypse. And it was not going well, I must say. Like, my hands were still shaking at the time. It felt like my inputs were a bit delayed or laggy, but I think it was just me. So I'm just sitting there with this hectic back pump, waiting to sort of calm down as I continue to do my duels, and eventually they did get progressively better. But I still practiced for at least another 10 minutes because I wanted to make sure, since this was the very last fight of the war and we were tied in deaths, although we had a better fight time, so I just had to make sure that I soloed this boss. And the funny thing is, when attack phase started, this was the first thing I noticed, I was like, really, an Apocalypse boss? I was wondering, did they do this just for me because they knew they were facing DSVG, and I'm sure some of them know I have a rank 4 Guardian. But even if I didn't, I still have a Guardian, and he is my favorite Apocalypse counter. So this is more or less the perfect boss for me. I've taken him so many times in Alliance Quest back in map 7 days, with my 5-star Guardian, which by the way is a much harder fight than this. Even without the 3-minute timer, the map 7 Apoc did more block damage and the nodes were a bit more annoying. So this is actually a downgrade because I have a much stronger Guardian. I mean, I went from rank 5 5-star to rank 4 6-star. And I'm using boost now, and this Apoc is not as difficult, so there was no way I could mess this up, right? Right, so the main thing I was doing in those duels was just making sure that my parrying is on point, especially for those special attacks, because initially it felt like I was having device issues, so I thought if I die or get hit, it would likely be due to a mistimed parry, so I just wanted to make sure. So I just used 2 special 3s and then a special 2, which is pretty safe, never lose the armor buff, and 16 charges is pretty good for a fight like this. It is a rank 4 Apoc, so it has about 600k health to start with. And by the time I threw the special 2, he had about 380k. So a pretty big special 2 to finish off this really close war in style. With about 20 minutes left on the clock, people were actually phoning me because they weren't sure I was gonna make it in time, because this is a bit late for us to finish a war. But managed to get it done in time, and we ended up winning by a couple of minutes in fight time. So yeah, a pretty fun war, and that's gonna be it for this one. Hope you guys found this interesting, and as always, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.